Today is May the 28th. This is Managerial Econ, ECP 3703. And we're going to go through a few things, and you're going to tell me generally how you're doing with the assignments you've had so far. Before I begin, is there anything you want to discuss? Anything administratively with the course? In a general sense, anything going on? Concerns? Yes, sir?
One of the videos I heard you say it's like open book exams.
Yeah. Obviously we don't have a book.
Yeah.
But what I did last term is I made up a reference sheet with the formulas and stuff on it.
Yeah.
So as long as you know how to use the formulas, you don't have to memorize them. I will post a copy of that reference sheet to Canvas in the next day or so, and you'll see what I'm looking at. Okay?
Thanks.
Cool. Good question. Anything else?
Is there any way that the class meet times might change?
I can't change them very much.
Okay.
No.
Wednesdays are church nights.
Today's Tuesday.
Yeah, no.
Oh, you're talking about starting next week?
Starting next week, right, or the next one.
No.
So
Sorry.
I just wasn't aware that this class was going to have the option to meet. So, of course, I would have taken a different one.
The best I can do. When we start on Wednesdays, we will be meeting at 5:30.
Okay.
Not at 6:30 or 7. So that should help some. And also, when we start meeting on Wednesdays, we'll be in a different room.
Okay.
We'll be over in B12. B12. Okay? Anybody want to give me a general sense of how you feel the course is going right now? Do you feel like you're getting overwhelmed by the calculations? Is the organization troubling you or anything? If you get any kind of issues or concerns or just things you'd like me to be aware of, email is the best way to reach me. Just send me an email. Identify what class you're from. I've got 5 different courses and 7 sections. Now I got students everywhere, and if I don't know which course you're talking about, I get a little confused. But anything you want to let me know about, email is the best way to communicate. Trying to put a little of this in perspective. There are 4 areas of calculations that I've been referring to in your homework. The first one we worked on last meeting class was just a simple mathematical equilibrium. I'll give you a demand equation and a supply equation and how many buyers and how many sellers, and you manipulate that to determine the equilibrium price and output. That is illustrated in problem set 1, question number 3. So that should be level 1 of here's the kind of work we're going to do. After that, we got into estimating linear demand. Estimating a demand curve when you have 2 data points. A price and quantity. You know, how many units did you sell at this price? How many units did you sell at that price? That's 2 data points. Starting with just that, connecting them and building the demand curve. That's your next major calculation. That's illustrated in problem set 1, questions 1 and 4. So you want to be comfortable doing this. Allied with that was consideration of the consumer surplus from that demand curve and the calculations on how much is the consumer surplus. So you want to be comfortable with that. The third area of concern, I use the term multivariate linear demand. That's a fancy sounding title. It just means a demand curve where you have several variables that influence how much people buy. Their incomes, the price of other goods, that sort of thing. That's illustrated in problem set 1, question number 2, and in problem set 2, question number 4. So those you want to get familiar with. The new material that we'll start tonight has to do with elasticities. You may recall from microeconomics, we talk about the price elasticity of demand. That if I raise my price 10%, how much percentage change will I see in my sales? That's what we're trying to get. So our initial discussion tonight, my intention anyway, is to kind of lay down the background of elasticities and then talk about how we can use these linear demand models and extract them pretty quickly. All right? lot, I think there's a lot for you to be doing. How much time has anybody done all of problem set 1? Anybody done all of problem set 2? Okay, that's where I would like you to be. Finished with problem set 2. And knowing it cold. And knowing it well enough to make up your own problems. Trade with people. Here, let's use these 2 points. This price and this quantity, this price and this quantity. You calculate it, I'll calculate it. Let's compare and see if we're still doing it the same way. If you'll do that, and you'll do that on 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 problems, very soon then you'll see the pattern. And it's really not very difficult. Okay? So, that's where we're going. Do you have any particular issues on the calculations about the linear demand model or the multivariate linear demand? Anybody? Anything comes to mind?
I just want to ask you a question about the equilibrium price for problem set 1 on number 3.
On number 3?
Yes.
Okay.
I got the equilibrium price that I got was $30.86. I wanted to make sure, is that right? And
No. Have you seen the solutions, the answers to those problems?
I pretty much watched the video,
Go to the,
but I can pass this and show you.
well, go to the module list, and it will say problem set 1. And when you open it up, it'll have the problem set, and then it has handwritten answers, just like this, for each question. So you can check your answers with that. And then if you have some issues, by all means, let me know. Go ahead.
But I can show it to you later.
Okay, because
I did my steps.
problem set 1, number 3,
Yes.
the equilibrium price was $49.93.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Oh, okay.
But I got the P price for $30.86, and I plug it into the P place, like -16 plus 3 times $30.86. Then I did 200 minus 4 times $30.86, and I did my steps.
Okay.
And then the one says 5,000 times 200 minus 4p, and 10 times -16 plus 3p. I did my steps, and I got p for $49.93.
Good. And then did you calculate the surplus?
Surplus for that question?
Yeah,
or
question 3, part B,
Part B?
price floor of $49.95.
Oh, no, I didn't do that.
Okay, well, I'll let you do that, but that's on the answer sheet too. It shows you the calculation. Okay. So I am relying on you to address these problems, to pull up these answers, check your work, and then let me know if it doesn't seem to make sense, okay? Rather than trying to go through each one of these, when we're only meeting once every 2 weeks, we're basically here to solve specific problems or just give a little background on stuff so you can get started more easily. So that's where I'm coming from. Anything else from you? Okay. Let's see here. Basic elasticities. One of the reasons I don't use a textbook is because the notation that I use is not the same as the textbook. So we'll all use mine, okay? So here's my notation. The E stands for price elasticity. Now most of the price elasticity we'll talk about will be the demand price elasticity for the demand curve. But there is also a price elasticity calculation for the supply curve. In very quick terms, we calculate this as the percentage change in our quantity demanded. That is, how much do our sales change when there is some percentage change in the price of a product. And this is another calculation that if you'll do a couple of 20 of them, it's very, very easy because you do it by rote. Let's take an example. If the price starts out at $100, and at that price our sales are 60 units, then the price drops to $90, and as a result, our sales increased to 80 units. Okay? Once again, 2 points. These are 2 points on a demand curve. We want to be able to calculate not just the demand curve, but in fact the elasticity between those 2 points. We're going to do it using this equation. But look how this equation works. The percentage change in sales, quantity of sales, is the change in sales, delta Q, divided by the average sales, or average Q. That's how we do that calculation in economics. How would you do that with these Q numbers? Just use the Q numbers here, 80 and 60. The change is 20, right? What's the average? What's the average of 60 and 80?
70.
70. Add them together, divide by 2. Remember all that nonsense? To me, that's pretty easy just to look at. But you can remember, just add them together, divide by 2, and the average is 70. So 20 over 70 is the percentage change in quantity. I use the same approach for price. Change in price over the average price. Price changed by 10, average price 95. Now, the math of that, I don't know. Drop the zeros, 2 sevenths times 95 over 10, 190 over 70.
2.71.
Good, 2.71. Negative or positive?
Positive. Negative because the
Price elasticity of demand is always negative, because anytime price goes up, quantity goes down. They're inversely related. So it's going to always be a negative number. Even if we don't write it, you should remember it's a negative number. But this change over the average, that's what we use throughout these calculations. So you want to be comfortable with that. Questions? How do you do the math? You could convert this into decimal, convert this into decimal, and then divide the two. That's fine. It doesn't have to be real precise. If you got a little bit of a decimal error in there, that's not a big deal. On an exam, I'll ask you to show me your work. As long as you're doing it the right way, we're not going to worry about little decimal point differences. So when we calculate the price elasticity of demand, and we ignore the negative, take it just as its absolute value, it's either going to be greater than 1, equal to 1, or less than 1. Okay? It's going to be maybe 1.67, or it's maybe going to be 0.92, bigger or smaller than 1. That's kind of important to us. And remember, we're ignoring the negative. We're taking the absolute value. Anytime the number comes up larger than 1, we're going to say, oh, that's an elastic demand. That means that the change in quantity is pretty sensitive to a change in price. It changes quite a bit. If we get a number that's less than 1, we're going to say that's an inelastic demand. And that means people don't change how much they buy very much when the price changes. Now, if you looked at the videos on elasticities, anybody? Some of you have? All I'm doing is repeating what's on those videos. When you visualize a demand curve, and we are just going to stay with straight line demand curves, linear demand curves. We want to remember conceptually that if you find the midpoint of this curve, the very middle point, that for all of the prices above that level, for this part of the curve up here, demand is elastic. And for the inelastic range, you're talking about the bottom half of the curve. Well, what does inelastic mean? What would it mean to you or me if we were running our company and we found out we had an inelastic demand? Would that be good news or bad news? Both. It's good news in the sense inelastic means they really like it, want it, need it, and we can afford to raise the price. Because if you stay in the inelastic range, every time you raise the price, they keep buying a lot of it, and so you make more money. That's good news. So when you find out that the demand for your product is inelastic, what should you do? Raise the price. And keep raising the price. Do not stay down here. You never want to operate in the inelastic range. Because every time you raise your price, you can make more money, so you keep raising your price and raising your price until you get at least up to the midpoint. And then you look at your costs, and you generally you will wind up operating somewhere in the elastic range. Now, where you operate up there is a problem we'll work on a little bit later. But if you calculate the coefficient for this elasticity, and it's less than 1 in absolute value, A, that's good news. Now raise the price. Let me say that another way. If you find out the demand you're facing is inelastic, your price is too low. You hear what I'm saying? Your price is too low. Raise it. All right. So what this is telling us is how much sales change when we change the price of our product. We have two other types of elasticities we want to be familiar with. The next one, I use a little Greek letter, sigma. And then two letters down here. Let's say that R is our good that we sell, and Z is another good. Flashlights and batteries. Two goods who are related. Are they substitutes or complements? Complements, because when you buy one, you buy the other. It's the same calculation, but watch carefully. It's the percentage change in the amount demanded of good R when there is a percentage change in the price of good Z. But the math is the same. We would have quantities of R and prices of Z, and we would calculate the cross elasticity between each of those prices of Z. Mathematically, the calculation is the same. What we will find out is that when the cross elasticity, that's what this is called, is negative, is less than 0, we're talking about goods that are complements, like flashlights and batteries. If we calculate sigma and it's positive, then they are substitutes or competitors, like Coke and Pepsi. And you've got to be able to recognize that quickly in a question or in an equation when you see it. Are these goods complements or are they substitutes? And then finally, a little Greek letter looks like an N. It's Greek eta. Okay, that is the income elasticity. That's the percentage change in our sales, percentage quantity demanded, when there is some percentage change in income among our buyers. If buyers' incomes go up 4%, what do you suppose is going to happen to sales of our product? Generally, it's going to go up. Maybe not by 4%, but what if you could forecast and be accurate and say, gee, sales next year are going to increase 2%? Would that be valuable to know? Oh, hell yes. Because you've got to have time to produce them or buy them and distribute them. Okay? Is it possible that if people's incomes go up, our sales will go down? How?
Depends on the type of good.
Good. What kind of good am I describing? An inferior good. Give me an example of an inferior good.
McDonald's.
Say it.
McDonald's.
McDonald's? So if incomes fall, sales at McDonald's rises?
Yes.
That would be an inferior good. Sure. The one I think of most often is either ramen noodles or the meat product Spam, if you've ever purchased that before. Some of you have, I can tell from your face. Okay? Sales of those tend to increase when people's incomes are falling. What's been happening to incomes in America for the last 20 years? With the exception of the top 1 or 2%, they've been pretty damn flat, and in many cases sliding. Is that good news for some companies? It's good news for ramen noodles. Good news for Spam. Good news for generic products, store brands, because people are shifting over to buy the cheaper stuff. So, when the income elasticity is positive, it's a normal good. And when the income elasticity is negative, it's an inferior good. Those are the basics from microeconomics. You should remember those and be ready to do the calculations when you're given the data. But again, that's microeconomics. We're interested in how do you use it. So that's where we'll go next. Questions before I erase this? Any kind of observations?
What is that thing called again? The not
Income elasticity and cross, or sometimes called cross price elasticity.
no the symbol.
It's sigma and eta. Little Greek letters, lowercase letters. So once you take a bunch of notes with all this kind of notation on it and you show it to somebody, they'll be impressed. Okay. I'm going to bounce back and forth to it a little bit here. I'm going to go to problem set 1, question number 2, and just copy down the demand equation they give us there. QD is, that shouldn't be a dollar sign, that should be 34,210 units, minus 5.02 P of Z, plus 1.6 price of Y, minus 1.2 price of R, plus 0.22 of M. Okay? That's a kind of a lengthy equation. Be sure which good we're playing with. Well, whatever our good is. Look at this part of the equation right here. Gotta get out my high-tech colored chalk here so I can be clear. Look at this part of the equation right here. Negative 502 times price of Z. What does that tell you about good Z with respect to our product?
It's inferior.
No?
It's a compliment.
It's not inferior because this is an income. This is the price of a different good. You're thinking of M, which is income. Because it has a negative coefficient, that means that the cross price elasticity between our good, let's call our good, I don't know, X, of X and Z is going to be negative, which means the goods are complements. Okay? So the sign of the coefficient tells us a lot right there. And if the people making good Z, if they reduced the price of their product, would that be good news for us or bad?
Bad.
Why?
Because then they're gonna want more and see if it's a compliment.
Compliments.
Yeah, you're gonna buy more.
When they buy that good, they buy our good.
Oh, okay.
So when they have their price fall and they sell more, they'll need more of our good to go with it. You see what I'm saying? Contrast that with good Y. What can you tell me about that? It's the price of a product, so it's the price of a related products. Sigma XY is what? Positive. Positive 1.6. So those goods are substitutes. So whoever or whatever Y is, or the company that makes Y, that's one of our competitors. People buy either from us or from them. So we can tell a little bit pretty quick just by looking at the demand equation with all the variables built into it. This is the demand equation we paid the market research company to go out and research and construct for us, so we know what we're facing. way you first used this equation, and in fact in this problem set, is you didn't worry about elasticities. You just had a value for PZ, you had a value for the price of Y, you had a value for the price of R, you had a value for income. You stuck the numbers in, you ran the calculation, you said, here's how much we're going to sell. Okay? Now, I think I've screwed the notation up. I think, in fact, R good is Z. So this is R good here, but we could look down here, and we could say that R is a complement. How do we know R is a complement?
It's an
It's a negative.
It's got a negative coefficient. And then when we go over here and look at M, what do we see there? It's a positive coefficient. M stands for income. So is this a normal good or an inferior good? It's a normal good. Which means if this is our demand curve, how do you suppose business has been for the last few years? Good or bad? How have incomes done for the last few years in the United States? They've hurt. People getting laid off, having their hours cut back, people losing jobs, going out and finding another job at a 30% pay cut. Yeah, this would tell us that we've probably been hurt pretty bad by this recession. The Great Recession, which started when? Started in December of 2007. That's about just before the housing crash. And while we're not technically in a recession today, we're still a very sick and anemic economy. We have very high unemployment, and a lot of companies are really hurting. We won't get too much into the macro. But beginning to sense what I'm trying to get you to do? When they show you an equation like this, that you can look at that and make some sense of it fairly quickly. You can draw some conclusions. Now, get all the nonsense out of the way here. If you go to problem set 2, problem set, 2 number 4, and you'll see in the solutions, once you set this multivariate equation up and you plug in the values for the price of Z and the price of Y and the price of R, and you plug all that in, and you work out and you get an equation. I have it here. But then, from this, not only do you know whether goods are complements or substitutes, you can also develop their elasticities. And it's in a series of videos done like this on a board called Linear Demand Elasticities.
Sorry.
And so you have discussion on linear demand with several videos, how to build a demand curve. And then subsequent to that, you have a set of videos on linear demand elasticities. And I'll just put a couple of notes on the board so you'll be able to reference this. For example, the cross-price elasticity between good Z and good Y is alpha Y times price of Y over quantity of Z. Z is our good, Z. So you've plugged in numbers here and here and here, and you've got some intercept. And then they'll tell you, at such and such, what's going on. Alpha Y is the part I want you to be clear on tonight. When you see this kind of equation telling you what's going on, what is the elasticity with respect to Y? Alpha is the coefficient in front of Y. So here's Y, and alpha Y is positive 1.6. So there's going to be a positive 1.6 times whatever price they give you for Y and whatever quantity of z occurs with that. Mostly I want you to be clear that when you see the term alpha y, alpha r, what's alpha r?
Negative 1.2.
Negative 1.2. What's alpha m? Positive 0.22. That's where that's going to fit into that as you go through those calculations. And I got a sense that between now and the time I see you again, if you get deep into this, it'll start coming together if you work on it enough, but it's going to be a little challenging the first few times, trying to pick the pieces out and follow through. That's why survival requires that by the next time I see you in 2 weeks, you absolutely have completed problem sets 1 and 2 and are comfortable with them. And so if you have some issues between now and then while you're working on them, let me know. Again, email is the best way. Just for general information, our schedules are clearly very scattered. I have no day classes this term. I have just finished 10 days of travel. I'm going to be in Gainesville. And if you need to get together during the day sometime, let me know. We'll work out a time and a place. If you can't make it to Santa Fe, maybe we can meet somewhere else over a cup of coffee and we'll resolve some of these issues if that's what we need to do. Okay? But I would tell you that the next couple of weeks of this course is going to be make or break as far as getting this stuff, hammered down pretty hard. The best help I've got for you, because again, when we're only meeting once every 2 weeks for about an hour, I don't have time to go through all this presentation. But I have done it in the past, and it's on videos. And watch those videos again and again and again. Do you understand it? That's the general message I had for you tonight, is to try to keep you moving in the direction of working on these problem sets. Let me check one other thing here. I don't think I put the other problem sets on here, but you do want to get all the way through problem set 5 for the midterm. Okay, so there are some more questions out there to be dealt with.
So I have a question. Problem set 1 and problem set 2 that we have, those are the good practice for our midterm?
That is exactly right. They are the best practice you can get for the midterm.
Okay.
Yes.
So pretty much, like for example, on problem set 1, you said omit the number 2, 5, and 6. That means we skip that one on problem set 1, correct?
Well, that means don't do them then, but you must do them before the midterm.
Okay.
Yeah. Which ones did it say omit?
On problem set 1.
Yeah.
Is number 2, 5, and 6.
Okay. Well, you're at the point now you can do 2, 5, and 6.
Okay, so that means I can do it now, right? Okay.
Yeah, by now you should be doing it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Before we meet again, we should be through problem set 5,
As far as you can get towards 5. I don't expect you'll get them all done by then.
because I believe after that would be the midterm. After the next time we meet, it's the midterm.
That sounds about right. Yeah. So if you do have them done through problem set 5, we can check anything you want next class. In addition, if you find issues or problems going through this stuff, if you'll let me know, email. I can also come in with this flip cam and I can make you a 5 or 10 minute video on your question and post it to YouTube too, if it looks like that would be a better solution, because we can't always meet face to face. Okay?
But I have another question.
Sure.
On problem set 1 and problem set 2, the problem that you went over, is it pretty much same for number 2 and number 4?
Let me get my stuff together here.
In problem set 1.
Problem set 2 question, problem set 1 question 2 is the same problem at first, but with a couple of questions. And then in problem set 2 question 4, it's the same equation with many more questions about elasticities and such
It
as that.
actually includes the questions from problem set.
Yeah, it basically says, okay, here's that question you just did with these 2 parts, here's the other 17 parts. Yeah. Okay? And I really urge you, if you can, construct some of your own problems. Working for practice. There is a pattern to these problems that if you work on them multiple times, those patterns will emerge and you'll get very comfortable with them. If you find yourself struggling, you just haven't done them enough yet. Work them again and again. Make up your own data. Okay, those are the high points. Is there anything else you would like to discuss?
I have one question about the calculator.
Yes.
And what, I found two separate TIs in my home, and I don't know if either one.
Take a look at it. Would you start this roster around here and date it, please? See what you got here. A TI 83 and a TI 36. I know nothing about either one.
Oh goodness, okay.
I don't.
I have to find another.
What have you got?
TI 30X2.
I've
It has the parentheses and cosine sign.
I don't think that'll do it. I don't think that has a time value series on it.
Oh, okay. So we need it specifically as a financial calculator.
It's a financial calculator, and the
What about this one?
critical buttons you're looking for have PV, FV, PMT, N, and IY. Those 5 buttons will be on that calculator somewhere.
The TI-83 has those.
The
The 83 has a function to do that. I don't know how to do it. If
It's
you need-
under the app function. I think it's a yellow or orange button, there it says APP.
It says A-Lot. Oh, apps, okay, I see it.
And then the first option should say finance, and that should be your financial calculator.
Oh. Okay.
And I'm sure you can go on the internet and get the operator's manual for that thing and have it all spelled out, step by step. But I would urge you to practice that soon, because if it doesn't work,
I need to go get
you
the.
need to get the other one. I think it'll work. I've had other people use that. I just have never used one myself. Okay, how you feel now? You got enough direction and confidence to get started and go through those problem sets? If it looks like we need to, I will make an announcement to this effect on Canvas, and we may meet again on another night before our regular schedule. If y'all see the need to do that, you let me know. Okay? Yes, sir.
How far in depth are you expecting us to go when you ask us on the consumer surplus questions about recommendations that the business could do to gain some of that lost business?
Not huge,
Okay.
but conceptually, when you can tell the size of the consumer surplus, that ought to have a big enough impact on anybody to say, well, damn, I need to get some of that money.
Okay.
How are you going to get it? Well, I'm going to show you about 4 or 5 steps or approaches to get that.
Okay.
And I'm going to want you to be able to spit those back to me.
Okay.
That's pretty much
But
it.
it's going to be coming to us
Yes.
down the road.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, if not before, certainly when we meet in 2 weeks, and if you'll remind me, I'll make sure we go through. Here's the things you can do. Price discrimination is one of them. 2-part pricing and block pricing are a couple of more. Those terms you want to listen for.
Okay. All right.
Good. Anything else? All right. That's all I have.